folks time any more than we have to. All right, we'll call the work session into session. This is actually from our recessed meeting, but we're going into work session and will not be in a meeting tonight because we did not advertise that meeting. We advertised only a work session. It is limited to water and sewer, and Mr. Bob Adams is here, and he'll be presenting here in just a couple of minutes. We employed him, y'all authorized me to employ him to make a rate study and to look at the history of our water and sewer funds and what the future looks like as best as we can forecast, of course. So let me say three or four things about how we got here, because looking around, I guess obviously I'm the one that's been here the longest, but none of y'all have been on the council very long, so let me just say this. Our current water and sewer budget this year, revenues are projected to be $668,089. We have obligated ourselves to debt of $5.7 million on sewer and another $200,000 on a water project that is part of a grant. That's almost $6 million, and obviously you can't pay that out of a $668,000 budget. So you know what that leads to, but let me tell you how we got here. The state of Tennessee got on to us pretty heavy back in the early 2010, 11, 12, 13 era, I guess. And we entered into a settlement agreement with them in 2020, I've got the wrong one here, in 2015. The reason, and I've given you a couple of pages from that, but the reason of that is the different things they've mentioned here. And I'll tell you the history of why we had to get busy. From March 2013 through February 2015, we submitted our daily reports. We had 47 overflows, 15 ammonia nitrogen violations, 14 occurrences where effluent flow through the plant was not reported, 2 biomonitoring failures, 2 violations of total suspended solid percent removal. I don't know what that means. 2 bypass of treatment violations, 2 cyanide reporting violations, and no, we did not poison anybody. 2 E. coli reporting violations, 2 TSS violation, 1 total phosphorus reporting violation, 1 total mercury reporting violation, and 1 biochemical oxygen demand violation. We were under a permit at that time that had, the permit always has parameters that you have to meet. And what brought this on was, of course, all of those different things, but they tightened the permit limits. So we agreed to a settlement agreement before they could hit us with more than anything else. The settlement agreement was for $174,200, but we had to meet certain things, and if we did that, those penalties would be waived. We did meet all of those things. As far as I know, we had to pay a few $100s in damages, but the big one that we had to obligate to was to repair our sewer lines, and I'm looking for, I thought I had it marked, but anyway, they gave us until December of 2026 to repair all the issues that we had. And of course, the issues we had could be traced to our interceptor sewer being in the creek and a lot of overflow situations when we had heavy rain. So They gave us the opportunity, in fact, the order says we would do it 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3 over 10 years. We convinced them to let us do it all at one time because we felt like there was an economy of efficiency of not mobilizing equipment 3 different times. So that's what we're into now, as you know. That explains how we got there on the sewer. On the water director's order, I don't mean to throw anybody under the bus, but we had to go into a settlement agreement and order with the Department of Environment and Conservation. We spent about 3 years, unknown to me and others, that our water operator reported nothing at all to the state. And they did not do a whole lot of upgrade to the system, maintenance. I'm having trouble finding my words. I want to be careful. So they called us in down there, went in 6 days before Christmas. And they hit us pretty hard, but they gave us a whole bunch of things we had to do, and we met them all within the money that we had available. But the big one on this one, well, there was actually 2 big ones. They required us to hire a water operator and a sewer operator separately, full-time. And before, we'd had one person handle both of them. So we did that. And then the big thing was we had to renovate the water storage tank, and we had to let them know within 30 days what our plan was. So this one came out in 2023. We got busy on that, and as you know, that's gone out for bids, and we will be opening the bids on that on May 20th, the morning of our council meeting. That is a $699,000 grant. We match with $200,000. Good news is we made our bond payment, which is due tomorrow, of $260,696.88. We made it from the revenues that we have in our account right now, although the balance is $288,000. The reason we're cutting that so short is we have the money in certificates of deposit to pay it, but the next one doesn't mature until May 18. I did not want to close that 18 days early and pay a penalty. If we can get by for the next 18 days, we think we can with the money that's coming in. We will then take that CD, take a portion of it, hopefully not all, put it back into our funds, and then renew that certificate of deposit. There's another importance to that of trying to keep that on deposit as long as we can, is that it draws interest, and that helps to alleviate some of our financing issues. So, as we prepared for this meeting, Bob Adams sent me the stuff that you're about to see. I called Ashley McElnulty, our financial consultant, kind of as a last-ditch thing, and said, Ashley, is there anything else out there that we can do to reduce the cost? Is there a grant? Is there another loan program or whatever? And he sent me back information Monday and said, your interest rate is at 4%. You're not going to beat that anywhere. So we have our bond, and that's what we got to deal with. So, as I said before, we employed Bob Adams to do an analysis. He has worked hard on this. He's met with me a couple of times, asked a lot of questions, gathered a lot of information from April. And so, Bob, I'll turn it over to you and let you be the bearer of bad news. I shouldn't have said that. That's why it wasn't fair to you.
We won't shoot the messenger.
Right. Yeah, no, you'll get out of here alive.
The
rest of us got to live here. We may not.
I certainly understand the challenges and the tough decisions that you're facing. And so what I've provided is just a brief kind of a PowerPoint. And so what I'll try to do is kind of give you a little bit of a background of what I did, what I saw. I also looked back through the Water and Sewer Fund for the last 5 years. I looked at all the financial data, and then try to project out what the next 4 to 5 years might look at. And of course, Mayor, as you alluded to, there's a lot of hurdles and additional costs that are facing you in the next few years. So I'll start with the background, and I'm on page, I believe it's page 3. And so basically what I start with is I look at the June 30, 24 base year. That's your most recent audit report. And so, and that was the primary source of data that I looked at was your completed audit reports. And what we noted was there's net income, and then there's a term called statutory change in net position that the state of Tennessee looks at. And they analyze the audit reports each year and look for things. And one of the things that I noted in the past 5 years, this is before you had the additional debt and the sewer project going on, but it wasn't by much. But the last 4 of the 5 last years, there has been a slight negative change in what we call statutory net position. And here's what the state of Tennessee says it, and I've got it written here. Each utility should have rates sufficient to have a positive change in net position separate from grant proceeds and contributions. Utilities that do not achieve this positive change for 2 years will be referred to oversight of the Tennessee Board of Utility Regulation, otherwise known as TBOR. So we, and I know we want to, my best advice, if you're referred to them, is just be compliant. And I've typically found they've been good to work with folks on that. And then I've basically been saying here, in future years, the fund, and when I mean fund, the water and sewer fund would incur slightly higher negative change under the current rate structure. And the primary driver, of course.
I think you meant to say significantly. You said slightly.
Oh, significant, yes.
I wish it was slightly.
Yeah. And the primary driver is the debt service payments. And so I'll go to the next page here. And this just shows you kind of a recap of how I came, and this is just coming straight out of the of your actual financial statements over the last 5 years. It was in 2023, there was a slight positive change in the net position. But as you can see, it's even though it was negative, it was just slightly below a break-even point. The next page here is just, this takes you back 10 years, or actually more than 10 years, takes you back 15 years. I looked at your, what kind of rate increases the water and sewer fund have had in that timeline, and I believe it was in might have been 2021, I think y'all had a 1.62 increase in the base rate and about a 4% increase in the volume rate. That last column over there, and I want to be careful on how I present this because this is a national average of CPI. So as we've heard a lot in the news and such, inflation has gone up, and we've seen that at various utilities in various times. So CPI since 2010 has gone up 44%. So and CPI since 2021 has gone up almost 16%. That's a national average again. So I guess the good news is you've been able to keep your rates well below that. But as I've seen with some other utilities, at some point it catches up to you. And that's what's happened here. So next slide. For 2024, this was before I think most of the debt went on the books. To basically your revenues are about a little over $600,000. In 2024, what this cost of service revenue is, that's how much revenue you need to basically pay all the bills in the current year. So that had a deficit. And then our 2025 projection is $600,000, of revenue. But to fund the additional debt, it would take about $920,000. And then that number kind of goes up a little bit. In 2026, it gets up to $1 million. And I don't have this written on here, but I think it eventually would get to 1.2 million. So, so the challenges on that, basically, there's, I've talked about net income, but there's also cash flow. And cash flow, as you alluded to earlier, is very important. So, the projections that we ran, basically, if you kept your rates the same, your overall cash, and this would get in all the way into the CDs, it would cause that cash to go at zero or negative in fiscal year 2027. So, and then another thing to note, usually when you have debt with bonds, typically they recommend you have a what they call a debt service coverage ratio. And what that is it's just a metric to basically measure your ability to service the debt. And normally, when you have, let's say, $5 million of debt, you want to have that ratio running at 1.2 a year. Right now, under the current rate structure, that number is going to be, it's like 0.1, so it's well below that. And so the next page here is when we do projections, we have to do assumptions. And we do assumptions on a certain date, things always change. So I thought it was important to say, here's what I kind of assumed. So, and I talked with April, I talked to a couple of the engineers, I talked to y'all's accountant as well, and they were very helpful in giving me this data. But so basically what we're anticipating is the sewer rehab costs, or the sewer rehab project will be at about 55% complete at the end of this fiscal year. I think it's a little over 50 right now. And then we anticipate it'll be about 100% complete at the end of the fiscal year 26. Another thing, we assume we can probably, this gets real in the weeds, but we assume that this rehab project, or this rehab, will probably add about 50 years of useful life to the sewer line. So basically what we do is we take that $5 million and amortize over 50 years. And then, of course, there's a water project behind that, and it's at about $1 million is what we were assuming. And we're assuming it's 100% complete in June of 27 and 15 years of depreciation. And then we assume generally, I can't predict what CPI is going to be over the next several years, but we generally assume about 3% increase in CPI each year. And that's what I assumed in your expenses, except for obviously debt principal, interest, and construction amounts. Those have different factors and assumptions. So the next page here is just it's the amortization schedule behind your current debt. And it's basically about $350,000 a year. And that shows you the principal and interest breakdown. And that will carry from 2025 to 2049 under the current terms. So the next page here is 5-year, where we start the 5-year projections. And so we're not all the way through 25, so we just try to project that as well in this analysis. So the biggest takeaway here, as I quoted earlier, at the top shows the net income, and the bottom section shows what cash flow projections are. And we're projecting cash flow, at the current rate. That's where I get the negative amount starting in 2027. And that's just this whole sheet is assuming that nothing is done to the rates, that you just continue on like you're currently at. The next page here have some graphs on it, and basically the first bar in each year, this basically shows 5 previous years and then the 5 projected years. So the cost of service revenue, this is what it costs to, the second bar is actually the actual revenue where it's currently at. And then the first bar in each year is the cost of service revenue. That's what it's going to take to pay your bills, including the debt payment. And as you can see, that's going way up, starting in 24 up to 25, and it's just going to continue to climb a little bit after that. It kind of, I don't want to say level off, but it kind of gets a little more stable when we get to 27, 28, 29. Of course, obviously, those are the hardest years to project because a lot of things can change between now and then. Okay. So I met, as the mayor alluded to, I met with him, and first of all, there's a lot of different ways, a lot of different scenarios we can run. We've presented 2 here, and before I go over the scenarios that we ran, the number one of the top things that I have to look at is how much revenue do you need to fund your cost. And so basically, with my assumptions and everything, this is just total for water and sewer. You're at about $600,000. We need to get up probably anywhere between 600,000. You need to get up to about 1.1 to 1.2 to fund the projected cost. So that's anywhere from probably an 80 to 90% increase in revenues. Now there's different ways to get there. And so scenario 2, scenario 1 was if you just absolutely didn't change your rates. Scenario 2, what we looked at was water, sewer, and combined. And right now your water and sewer rates are the same, or the same.
Yeah.
Well, you've got this $5 million debt, and it's all for sewer. So, and this is one recommendation I would have, no matter what you do, I would recommend that you, if you know, when you go up on your rates, that sewer increase probably needs to be different than the water one. That would be just my recommendation on that, and account for those separately and everything, and then that way it'll give you, I think it'll help you in the future too. So, so on scenario 2, what we projected, we also have to consider how we phase this in. Do you do it all at once? Do you do it over time? I mean, that's obviously part of the decision-making process. So in scenario 2, this scenario 2 was, what does it take to get to a positive change in net position every year starting in 26? And if you were to achieve that, on the water side, we would project we probably think you need about 20% more revenue in the water system. And then in 27, we project it probably you need about 35% more revenue to fund the water system, because that's when I believe it's the water rehabilitation project goes online. So the next page here is the sewer projections. And on the sewer projections, this is the big one. In 2026, your revenue would need to go up about 130% to fund the costs that are currently out there. And so what we're doing with that scenario is, I believe I said you need about, let me make sure I got my numbers here good. We projected in 26 you need about 75% more revenue is what you need. So we said 20% in water and 130% in sewer. Now granted, that's a big jump. But I at least wanted to kind of lay out, based on the projected costs, what does it take to get above break even and have a little bit left, not much, but a little bit left over. And then the next slide here is called Scenario 2 Combined. That's just adding up the water and the sewer to get you to basically an amount. And right now we're projecting, if you did that, you would be at about a $50,000 positive change on change in net position or net income, better way to put it. And so you need about 75% more revenue in 26 and about 12% more revenue in 27. At the bottom here, if you'll notice the cash flow projections, obviously at the end of 25, you've got unspent bond proceeds. So that's what's driving that cash up. But in 26, 27, and 28, and 29, you're kind of floating around plus or minus that $1 million mark. And I believe y'all, when I was looking back at the historical financials, that's about where you've been in the cash position, is somewhere around $1 million each year. And that's at the end of the year. So basically, I think that would also kind of get you to a similar mark on the cash that you're currently that you were maintaining before this project started. And I know when a project starts, the cash flows go way up and down. So, and then this graph right here, right behind it, is basically showing you what the actual revenue is and what the cost of service is. And basically what that's telling you is if these projections held up, basically you would have enough revenue to fund your cost. Okay.
So in 2026, you increase of 20 and 130 on sewer. 2027 is 35 on water, but no increase to sewer.
Correct.
Correct.
And one of the things that was kind of interesting when I was looking at this is, say this, on your sewer, that debt, as you know, is a pretty big piece,
Yep.
Probably a bigger piece than what I would normally see. Your interest costs go down each year as you're paying down that principal. So it's almost like on the sewer, you got to make a big climb, and then when you get up there, it's almost like that the decrease in interest costs would actually, at least looking at the projections I looked at, might slightly outpace in like that 3%.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, obviously that climb is going to be very difficult, but once you get there, I think you'd be at at least you'd start seeing that interest cost go down some. Now the principal goes up. Basically your payment stays the same, but the principal is going through your balance sheet.
The bank gets their money first.
Exactly.
As always. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that interest going down will help your net income. May not help your cash, but it'll help your net income. So scenario 3 was very similar to scenario 2, except I think the only thing we changed on scenario 3 was on the water side. What if we took a 35% increase on water in 2026 and a 20% in 2027? It really didn't change the numbers a lot, other than it just gave you a little bit more net income in 26 and 27.
It kind of pads out looking better on like on your bill. It's not such a culture shock on the two being drastically different. So.
Correct. And so, yeah, and then the scenario 3 combined, yeah, you're kind of hovering a little bit over $1 million of cash and CDs at the end of each year. And then I've got a graph here that, I mean, it looks very similar to scenario 2.
Yeah.
I guess, and then I'll go to action steps for consideration. I think I've already covered some of this already, but we analyzed 3 scenarios for rate setting. We can always do another one if we need to. And, you know, it's, we obviously recommend charging, well, as I said earlier, we do recommend whatever you do, that we think it would be a better representation of funding your costs if you probably did consider a different rate for water and sewer. And we've kind of laid that out here. When I was talking about that debt coverage ratio not hitting 1.2, both of these scenarios get you slightly above that 1.2. And I think that would be, I don't know, sometimes that's a requirement in a bond agreement. I don't know, I didn't see if it was in yours or not.
On the bond agreement?
Yeah, that debt coverage ratio.
I don't recall seeing it, but that doesn't mean it's not there.
Exactly. And then what happens if you have to do something in the future? You know, you want to be able to demonstrate that you're meeting. I mean, 1.2 is a pretty standard covenant ratio to meet. And whether they require it or not, I would recommend that you definitely do whatever you can to meet that. I mean, it will only help you in the future. And then just, you know, keep looking at the rates, because obviously my assumptions as of today, something could change next year. We've seen stuff. I couldn't predict what inflation or CPI has done. If you'd asked me in 2020, I wouldn't have got close to what it is right now. Another thing is, as you alluded to earlier, maximize that cash you've got on hand to earn interest income as much as you can. That's the best advice I can give you. Just it won't completely solve the issue, but boy, it helps a lot. Just keep watching that and have an expectation. I normally see, based on the current interest rates, and this is on the cash side, not on the debt side, but I'd recommend you can probably get at least 3, 4, 5%. And
We're getting a little more than 3 on some, 2.8 on others.
yeah,
And with the borrowing money being at 4, you can kind of understand why it's down below it a little bit.
yeah.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's good. And then, okay, and then I've got on the back on this, I think it's on the last page here. If we ran these scenarios through your rate structure, this is what it would look like. We've done what the current rate structure is, scenario 2 and scenario 3, and then we divided it up between water and sewer.
So your recommendation is, and I know the answer to this, but is to divide the water and sewer rates to where we're paying off the debt, the sewer revenues rather than the water revenues.
Yes. For instance, like we'll look at the inside the city rate. Let's look at scenario 2. Your water rate, base rate, this is like the minimum bill is $15.64. You know, that would go up to $18.77. And then on the sewer side, it's at $15.64. It would go up to $35.97. And then we've got the volumetric charges, and we applied the same. I believe it was 20% on the water and 130% on the sewer, and that's what your rates would look like if you went with that scenario. And the main thing the state looks for is, are you getting a positive net income each year? That's the main thing they look for. They really give you a lot of discretion of how you get there.
I can tell you that as soon as this audit is over, they're gonna call me in down there and say, what are you doing to fix it? So hopefully we'll have the fix at least in place
Yeah,
So,
yeah, if you have a plan in place, it goes, I can tell you from my own experience, it goes a lot better.
Can I just ask why you were able to split the water from 26 to 27, but not the sewer? Is it just because of our debt of the sewer? You were able to split the water at 35% in 26, but 20% increase in 27. Like, but in the sewer, it's all at once. We're having to increase.
Yeah, because what's happening is, yeah,
That's what I
it's to
figured.
basically to service that principal and interest.
I thought so.
I will tell you, sometimes when I do these analysis, it'll project, well, you ought to continue maybe doing a 2 or 3% each year. The fact that that interest goes down a little bit does, at least in this analysis, does, it would, unless something changes, it would prevent you having to do one like the next year.
other questions, Bob? I assume you'll take questions?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I guess you looked at other cities kind of on what they did on their water rate, or did you see any, do they raise theirs more or less every few years, or how are they, what is usually a standard about how they're doing this?
I see it a lot of different ways,
Yeah.
but I see some that'll just do it 2 or 3%
Just a gradual.
every year, and I see some that might look at it every 2 or 3 years. I think that the CPI adjustment really caught a lot of people off guard a few years ago, and I mean, I've got some systems that went 10 plus years without having to raise rates, and they were able to increase their expenses, absorb the cost. But then when when cost of living started going up, and the other thing too that I've seen is construction costs have gone up even higher than the
Everything's on chemicals to whatever,
Yeah.
treatment wise.
Exactly.
I really like scenario 3 better than scenario 2, just because it looks like it will level out better.
You talking about doing the 35% water in 1 year instead of the 20?
I think it will shift it quicker to not be so violent, and it will stay maintaining that instead of just being.
There's nothing wrong with building up a little cushion,
Yeah.
Now, it's not to say whether we will or not, but I feel good that Bob's done a thorough analysis of this. I mean, we all knew it was gonna have to go up significantly. I didn't anticipate quite this significantly, but, as we mentioned a couple of times, I don't ever remember a time when the city of Watertown borrowed $5 million or was in debt $5 million. This is the first, and it had to be done. If we had not done it, the state would have forced us to. And that would have been not good in my opinion. So, other questions, comments? Come out of shock. My thought would be that we take this and study it and think about it, not to make any rash decisions. Of course, we weren't going to tonight. We have, right now, we paid all our debts, let me say it that way, as of 10/30 this month. And we don't have another large debt payment due until November. But we do need to start accumulating some extra money to pay that. My original thought was to ask y'all to recess tonight and come back in a few days to vote on the first reading, and then vote on the second reading on our regular meeting on May 20th. I kind of changed my thought a little bit from listening and from talking to Bob, that maybe we consider on first reading at our May 20 meeting and our second reading in June, which is when we'll do our budget and do it all at one time, and then how would that affect what water bills? April, if we approve this in June, would it be the August bill that it actually,
If we approve June 30th,
if we approve the third month,
June
Tuesday
17th.
in June?
let's see.
Be
we
June
would-
17th.
Yeah, we would send the bills out around the 17th, 18th, 19th timeframe. But we'd have to have time to get the rates in and change the rates.
You know, that's cutting it kind of close. I guess what I was thinking is, would it be July 18, 19, 20 would be our first bill?
Probably so.
That'd be our first bill in the budget year, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So maybe when we leave tonight, we recess to the call, and if we need to meet before that, we can. If not, we'll meet on the 20th, adjourn that meeting, and then go into our regular meeting.
Our next meeting is
May 20th, I believe.
May 20th, so basically you're talking, that's 3 weeks from tonight minus a day.
Yeah.
Why don't we just have 2 meetings in
I was
May?
saying, why don't we do the first reading at our May meeting, and we can recess that and come back for a second reading.
We'd have, not recess, because we have to, because you gotta do it in 2 separate
Yeah,
meetings.
however you have to do it, have one on
We
the,
do it.
at a regular meeting in May, and then have another special meeting or at some point before the,
We
you
can
know,
do it if we need to.
around the 1st of June
Yeah.
to
To
get
have
it.
time, yeah.
In that way, it would be approved a couple weeks before the June 17th, when, and it'd give you 2 more weeks to get things in the system.
So you want it to be effective the bill due July 10th?
The sooner the better. I mean, I think that's still to be determined. I'm not sure we have to make that decision, well, we can't make a
Yeah,
decision.
just something to think about.
That's what I'm trying to get, as much information.
I think it needs to. I think
If
that,
we print the bills, June, and they would be due July 10th.
Okay.
and I think we just need to start the new fiscal year with the way it's gonna be.
Right.
All right, then, we can't really adjourn this meeting tonight because we never called it in the session.
Right, right.
So we'll recess and go, probably just recess to May 20, call it to order, adjourn, and go into our regular meeting. Do that. Bob, your availability for questions or comments from anybody after the fact? Can they email you, call you? whatever?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's a lot of information to digest, a lot of good information. I appreciate what you've done. You took your time, did it right, and I hope that's what we're gonna do. John, anybody commenting on there?
No comments.
Good, nobody building a gallows or anything?
Do I have any?
We have 4 viewers.
4 viewers.
Nobody building a gallows yet, or at least they're not saying so.
Yeah, that,
Let me say a couple of things too that I want y'all to be prepared to answer. The first one doesn't make any difference, but, and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus again, but the first term I was mayor, this happened to us. I got called into Nashville, and we were way out of whack. And they told me that we had to raise water and sewer rates 45%. The state dictated that, and we did. That's when I thought, I certainly wouldn't be a second-term mayor, and I really didn't know that I'd live to be 30 years old or not. But the people accepted that because we explained it to them and laid it out like Bob's done. And we survived that. I'd hope this time we'd be in the neighborhood of 45 or 50. Not so, obviously. The other thing I want to say is that everything that we spend in water and sewer comes from water and sewer revenues. There's no property tax in there because people, it's against the law to use property tax to fund your water and sewer system. And when I say against the law, it's criminal. So it's all water and sewer revenues, and that's what you've got to have to operate your system in the black. I can anticipate what's gonna happen, is people are gonna, on the street, are gonna say, well, they're raising these rates to put that turntable in. Let me tell you, it's not going to the turntable, it's going strictly to water and sewer, has to. I don't anticipate living a lot longer, but I do anticipate not spending that time in the penitentiary. So I'm not gonna put any money where it's not supposed to go. Now, that won't stop the people from getting stirred up, I don't think. I hope I'm wrong, but I just want to prepare y'all for this.
That will be one of many things that will come out.
Absolutely,
This will be,
absolutely. And we had this happen one time when we raised property taxes, and people said, go and look, the mayor built a new house. And I said, yes, and go and look at the mortgage. And that stopped that. So that's part of what we do as being leaders, will be criticized. But I hope we'll lay this out. Bob's done a wonderful job, I think, and I appreciate him. If you'll just be available till we get this done on second reading. And now, that don't mean I'm not ready to pay you. I mean, you send me a bill, whatever, but I need you to be available to us.
Yes.
Well,
and I'm with Laura, I don't like that 130%. But then again, breaking it into 2 steps is not gonna help us with our service our debt. I mean, it's the amount of that debt that is forcing us to that percentage.
I think the 130%, honestly, the higher on the sewer is good, because if anyone asking of why rates are higher, it's literally because we're working on sewer. So I'm thinking that sewer being higher is great for, because it is what it is. But
And also from that, because I've done this so many times, people have asked me, and I'm like, well, we got a sewer main that was buried in the bottom of the creek 45, 50 years ago, and that was an okay thing then, but we just can't, and we got to get that out of the creek. We have no choice. And it's not an inexpensive venture to.
Yep. Other questions or comments for Bob? Thank you. I appreciate Ms. Nix being here. I anticipate a lot more people being here tonight.
It wasn't announced. I heard it down at the depot this
It's
afternoon.
certainly, it's on our website. We sent it out a week ago. And we announced it, yeah. And I announced it on the radio, the other.
Matter of
In our
fact,
last
it was
meeting.
announced as part of the minutes from our last meeting, I do believe.
Yeah, so.
Because we had a discussion about
the day.
We did.
last Wednesday versus this Wednesday.
We did. But I'm glad you saw it. Okay, anybody else?
It's a nice presentation, though.
Yes. Thank you.
It's very nice.
Yep, thank you, my friend. We'll
put
make
it
you an
down on my
honorary
level.
citizen. We give you a key to the city, but we need it. So,
I understand.
thanks,
Thank
Bob,
you,
appreciate it.
thank you.
All right, we'll recess this and, leave here tonight and have something to study on. I've been dreading this a long time. Okay,
Can I
thank y'all.
ask, since we're just in recess, I feel like I can ask this. How come we haven't raised rates but one time since 2010?
Because your mayor and council people didn't like raises rates.
I know, but we knew that we were gonna have to do the water project. So I'm just curious why we didn't raise 2% a year, so we wouldn't be jumping 130%.
Well, you know, hindsight's 20/20. And, but I dare say, if you had raised rates, say, first of all, 2% a year not gonna cover it. But if you had raised them 5% a year, people are gonna say, what are you doing that for? You don't need the money right now. Why are you doing it? So,
If you don't ask questions, you don't learn, and I just need to
No,
know.
I'm fine with you.
For future
I'm-
purposes,
I'm fine, and let me tell you, I've debated that in my own mind.
if I'm still sitting here in 15 years, I kind of want to know how to answer some
Well,
questions.
I hope you're sitting here in 15
I hope
years.
I'm sitting here in
And I hope
15
y'all will
years.
remember wherever they laid my ashes, or my body.
Yes, and I will say, Mayor Mike told me this, and this is how
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it.
I think that's back to You got the 50-year depreciation basically on this. So going forward, whether it's those of us that are here need to kind of part some wisdom to those that come after us, is that you've got to account for that depreciation cost, because at some point in time, you're gonna have to pay that bill. And that's basically what we're doing here, because we haven't had a major upgrade on our sewer system since it originally went in.
That's exactly right. And
So there hasn't been any proactive maintenance over the last 35, 40 years. Therefore,
very true.
you got the total replacement that you're having to bite off at one time. And that's where they're going forward, something incremental will be beneficial, because, maybe we can, I think the next thing we're gonna have to do is probably update our treatment plant.
Well, I can tell you the state's gonna be talking about that,
Yeah.
but that's gonna be a fight from somebody else. And I don't think that's imminent. Steve, but it's not too far off.
Yeah,
A lot of it depends on what kind of results we get from this. If we can decrease the overflows and all of that stuff, it may limit the need for that.
yeah, and decrease our water loss that we're getting on the water side.
There you go. And we got a study going on that as well. We're doing things that need to be done. To Laura's point, did they need to be done 10, 15, 20 years ago? Probably. Probably. But,
Our biggest problem is gonna be growth,
yeah,
because we don't ever be able to treat
yeah,
what's coming.
yeah. And we're gonna have a new middle school up here. And keep in mind, I'm speaking in code here, but keep in mind, the high school and the middle school don't buy their water from us, but they do use our sewer. Y'all kind of reading between the lines there.
Yeah,
So I have to be careful because I
What?
have a job with this.
Well, number one, when years and years and years ago, we were in a hot mess financially in this city when I was a little girl. And y'all have worked really hard to get us in a good spot. So honestly, I knew this was coming, but I wasn't that worried because I know where we were and I know where we're going. And this is just a jump that we're gonna have to do, and it's part of it. So we've hit from a huge negative balance to we're good.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, and what I've got to remember, I've got to practice what I preach here, but not to get angry when people attack. Reason with them, tell them why we're doing it, why we have to do it. That worked 40 years ago. I felt like people trusted what we did. I want them to trust this time. That doesn't mean they have to like it, and they're not going to like it once a month, but I hope they'll trust us that we're doing what's in the best interest. Because I can promise you, as y'all know, I'm preaching to the choir here. We don't want to get to the point where when people go to the bathroom and can't flush them out.
Right.
I mean, we got to provide that service. We got to. And we got to provide water.
and one more side note. You're talking about the middle and the high school. The pending development on Sparta Pike is the same situation. The
Yeah.
water will come from the county, the sewer will go through the city.
Yep. But now the one on the
other one-
that's all ours.
Yeah, the other pending one that's been approved is all in-house.
Yep.
And it's the larger one, but still, the Highway 70 project out here on the hill is,
And that's some of you saw the assumptions that Bob made. He can't assume that because he, first of all, he didn't know that, so I'm sorry.
No.
no.
But we may have some things that kick in there, a little extra money as we go.
What happened with the high school? I wasn't here then. When they built that high school or the land or something, there was some kind of an agreement.
No, the county has the right to all water outside of city limits. And when they bought the high school land, it wasn't in the city limits. We brought it in the city limits at the request of the director and the Board of Education. So they got the right to the water. We can't challenge that. It's in state law. And same thing will happen because they go further that way. Now, when you annex, if we have to do any annexing, and we will sooner or later, somebody will, you have the right to challenge that. Most of the time that gets worked out in some way. But that's what happened there.
So the middle schools already, we're sitting fine with that being in our.
No, it's in the counties.
It's
So
county
we
right
need to
there.
annex that into the city.
Well, we annexed the high school, didn't change anything. I don't know, we can job on that when it happens. That's gonna happen. We're gonna get that. So. Okay, ready to go?
Motion to recess?
Thank you. Y'all go home. Thank you for attending.